So pretty much as soon as we got back from the launch of the new Triumph Rocket 3 for 2020, we posted the video on our YouTube channel and it got quite a lot of attention. It's one of our fastest growing videos that we've ever posted. The main thing that people are saying in the comments though is, what's it like compared to Ducati's Diavel? So it seems to me that the public have already they've already decided what is the rival for the Rocket 3, and it is the Ducati 1260S Diavel, the top spec Diavel, or even the X Diavel. So we thought we'd just do a quick video and a little bit of a rundown and a comparison between the specs and also what each bike is like to ride, as I've been lucky enough to ride all of the Ducati Diavels and also the new Rocket 3. So here we go, let's just have a little look at the engines for each of these vehicles first. So everybody knows the big news with the Triumph Rocket 3 is of course that 2,294cc engine, which is putting out somewhere around 165 horsepower. With the Rocket 3 though, the power figure isn't really the big news story. The big news is the torque, which is a mammoth 163 newton meters of torque, or to put it into metric is 221 newton meters of torque at 2,750 rpm. The Ducati Diavel, for comparison, is a real torque monster as well. It's got 95 foot-pounds of torque. It sounds like a lot less than the 160 odd that the Rocket 3's got, but what you have to remember with the Diavel is it is quite a lot lighter than the Rocket 3. We'll get onto the dimensions and weights a little bit later, but one thing that I do know from riding both of these bikes, not back to back, but you know, within a short space of time, the Rocket 3 feels more refined. The power delivery from that 3-cylinder engine is smoother. It feels much more linear and it feels a lot less peaky. The kind of the way it feels when you're out on the road is when you really pin a Diavel against the throttle stop and you bang up through the gearbox really hard. It is face meltingly quick and it feels it. Everything about it, the urgency of the engine and the way in which it throws you at the horizon, it just feels ridiculously fast. If I'm completely honest, the Rocket 3 doesn't feel as quick, but it does feel more refined. It feels smoother, and if I was going to have to ride one every day, I'd say that I'd probably feel more comfortable and more at home on the Rocket 3, whereas the Ducati Diavel, it always sort of feels like it's trying to wrestle with you, like a Ducati should. So we're just going to go through and have a look at the suspension now. Both of these bikes have got decent spec, decent quality suspension. The Rocket 3 has got shower forks and a shower rear shock, which have got full adjustability with no electronic intervention. The Diavel has got a slinky set of 48mm Olin front forks and an Olin's rear monoshock. Both of those are fully adjustable. There's really not a lot to choose in the suspension stakes. Yes, the Ducati has got the headline getting Olin's setup, but riding the Rocket 3, the suspension is really excellent. You only feel like it is getting slightly overworked if you're completely hammering into a corner and you've got the bike bouncing off the ABS. There really isn't much to put between these bikes in terms of suspension. It's well chosen, well set up on each of the vehicles. If I'm going to be completely honest, the Rocket 3 is slightly plusher, but then again, the Diavel is slightly sportier in that the suspension's got a little bit more support, it's a little bit firmer, and it does make the Ducati a much quicker handling bike. If you were going to fire it up a mountain road that have got a load of switchbacks, for instance, the Ducati is gonna run rings around the Rocket 3. But then again, the high-speed stability of the Rocket 3 with those larger balloon tyres and the slightly plusher suspension and the slightly more raked back steering geometry does make it a more stable machine at high speed. So just going to look at the electronics of each bike, and again, like the suspension, it's a bit of a stalemate on this one. Both bikes have got Corning ABS, ran through an IMU. The Ducati's got riding modes, the Rocket 3's got riding modes. You can go through and you can adjust a lot of the bike settings through the TFT dashes of each bike, which is exactly the same. There really isn't much that you can sort of pull them apart on. If one thing, I do like the interface, the human motorcycle interface, HMI of the Ducati. It's nice and clearly laid out and easy to use, whereas the Triumph's is slightly fiddlier, and it all works through the left-hand switch cube, which is quite small. But again, what you're going to have to do if you're looking at getting either one of these bikes, you're going to have to get yourself down to a dealership and try and get an extended test ride and actually see what they're like to live with. So the final point that is going to be one of the big things that makes people lean one way or another with these is the price. If you go for the Diavel, the standard Diavel comes in at 16,795, while the S model, which is the upgraded Öhlins suspension and Brembo brakes version, comes in at 19,985. The Rocket 3, on the other hand, is available in two versions. The R, which is the red bike that we are riding in the review video that you can see, which is a stripped back, bad to the bone roadster, that comes in at £19,500, while the GT is £20,200. So while the difference in price between the Rocket 3 is smaller between the two models, if you go for the top spec S version of the Diavel, you are getting a lot more in the way of hardware. The increase in premium of the GT over the R in the Rocket is basically just some additional accessories that have been added to the bike to make it a little bit more comfortable for touring. So, in terms of a verdict of which one of these two bikes is the better machine, it's so close that I don't think I'm going to be able to call it, in all honesty. It's going to come down to an individual user's preference and how they're going to ride the bike. If you spend a lot of your time hitting B roads and going up twisty lanes and doing European tours up in the mountains in the Alps, a bike like the Rocket 3 is going to be excellent because it's going to get you there in comfort, and you can probably load it up a little bit more than the Diavel. There is a touring pack for the Diavel and also for the Rocket 3. I have a feeling that companies will probably take to making aftermarket accessories that turn the Rocket 3 into a more distinct tourer. It's probably a little bit more light than the Diavel. The thing is, when you get to those mountain passes like the Route Napoleon and the other roads over the Alps like the St Bernard's Pass, you're going to point the Ducati at the bottom of it, and it's going to be such a rewarding ride by the time you get at the top, because the handling of that bike is just that little bit better than the Rocket 3. That said, when it comes to hammering down the auto route back to the UK when you've finished, the Rocket 3 is probably going to be more comfortable and a much more refined bike to ride that sort of that boring bit of the journey on. It's going to be one of those. If you are looking at either one of these bikes, get yourself to each of the dealers, get yourself an extended test ride, and let us know what you think in the comments below.